Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. We're so excited to be here with you. But before I say another sentence, I would like to introduce you to our interpretation team, Lourdes, Rose, Aldo, Julieta,
Hello.
and Allison.
Bonjour, bonjour tout le monde. Et donc, nous allons commencer là avec interprétation. Hein? Et donc, ça me dit c'est que à côté, si vous avez une question que vous besoin poser à droite sous le côté qui gagne chat là, vous avez écrire question yo. Et si que tout et puis en bas sous écran, vous pouvez côté pour capable choisir quelle langue vous voulez. Si vous avez un globe, le globe là, vous choisir en français. Puisque Zoom pas gagné option pour créole haïtien, donc on choisir option pour français. Mais toutes les conférences là, tous les événements jeudi, on va faire en anglais, mais donc on est capable d'entendre toute bagaille en créole haïtien.
Buenas tardes. Las organizadoras del evento de hoy tienen la firme determinación de crear un espacio multilingüe. Para ayudar a crear este espacio, tenemos interpretación disponible en creole haitiano y español. El evento se realizará en inglés y usted podrá hacerles preguntas a las autoras en cualquiera de los 3 idiomas. Creemos que el idioma está íntimamente ligado a quienes somos, nuestros pensamientos, la forma en que vemos el mundo, nuestras emociones, culturas, pasiones y política, y queremos crear espacios donde podamos compartir todo eso. Dentro de unos minutos activaremos la interpretación para este evento. Y si usted está usando la aplicación Zoom, podrá ver el icono de un mundo en la parte de abajo de su pantalla. Para escuchar la interpretación, haga un clic en el mundo y seleccione español. Si tiene algún problema al respecto, por favor, escriba un comentario en nuestro chat.
Hello, the organizers of today's event have made a commitment to create a multilingual space. To help create that space, we have interpretation available into Haitian Creole and into Spanish. The event will be held in English, and you will be able to ask questions of the authors in any of the 3 languages. We believe that language is intimately connected to who we are, our thoughts, the way we see the world, our emotions, cultures, passions, and politics. And we want to create spaces where we can share all of that. In a few minutes, we will activate interpretation for this event. And if you're using the Zoom application, you will see a globe icon at the bottom of your screen. To listen to interpretation, click on the globe, and to listen in Spanish, select Spanish, and to listen in Haitian Creole, select French. If you have any problems doing this, please leave us a comment in the chat box.
Hi, we're again so excited that everyone could be here with us. My name is Veronica Santiago Lu. I'm the founder and general coordinator of Word Up Community Bookshop, Librería Comunitaria. We're very grateful for y'all for being here, because as you know, this event was meant to be at the United Palace, the 4th largest theater in Manhattan, because we needed nothing less than a palace to celebrate our much beloved author, Julio Alvarez. We're really grateful for Edwidge Danticat and Angie Cruz for joining us for this event to make it an even more special evening. I'd like to also thank all of the Word Up Collective members, especially staff members Carolina Valencia and Emmanuel Abreu, and our board of directors. Thanks to the interpreters. Thanks to the United Palace for having, worked with us through the switch, the Department of Cultural Affairs for funding elements of this event. We'd also like to thank our co-sponsors who helped us think through some aspects of it, and you'll hear from them shortly. Also, many thanks to Stuart Bernstein and to Michael McKenzie, who really worked with us. Michael McKenzie from Algonquin, which is Julio's publisher, and the publisher of Afterlife. All of you have done so much. And also, thanks to all of you for being here, for getting tickets, for buying the books, and for supporting brick and mortar spaces like Word Up, which are, in totally new territory right now. after the pandemic, you can find Word Up at 2113 Amsterdam Avenue at the corner of 165th Street in Washington Heights, NYC. Though for now, you can check out wordupbooks.com or follow us at wordupbooks to see what we have going on. We opened in 2011 as a pop-up shop that was supposed to last just 1 month, but after so much community support, here we are on the verge of celebrating 9 years. We will probably have to celebrate that 9th birthday online, but we'll do what we can to make it a celebration still. We're also a nonprofit. So if you're so moved and are able to, we take donations at any time, either of books or of volunteer help when we're open again, or of any dollars at all. We also operate as a collective, so we're comprised of a tiny staff and around 60 active volunteers who are part of the decision-making process of our collective in our neighborhood. There are some other elements to the event that other members of the team will share now too.
So I know a lot of you are gonna have a lot of questions. If you can keep your questions to Julia to the Q&A box, which you will find basically next to the chat box. Put all your questions there, all your reactions and stuff. You could put it in the chat box. Please keep it civil and as clean as you can. At Word Up, we have a safe space policy, and you could actually put that up on our website, and we'd like to follow that online as well. So, please be civil to each other and, don't be dicks. That's basically my policy. And at the end of the talk, you will, bunch of questions will be answered, and Angie Cruz will be taking care of that. So ask your questions.
Yeah, so we just want to say that seeing all the online love, especially during these times, really warms our heart, and kind of, spreading the love of literature and collaborations like this. And it allows, things like this to happen. So we just want to remind everyone to please tag us at wordupbooks.com, and also use the hashtag wordupxjulia, so we can see your posts and we can share them, and share them with everyone that follows us. And also tag our sponsors, the Border of Lights and Dominican Writers Association. And here to talk more about them are Cynthia Carrion and Angie Abreu.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cynthia Carrion, and I'm here with Annabella. I know Eddie's here too. We're just super excited as Border of Lights to be sponsoring this incredible event with two of what we call our madrinas of the movement for Border of Lights, Julio Alvarez and Edwidge Danticat. This is such an incredible honor to be a part of this and to kind of share this incredible moment with my daughter, with my mother, with all the intergenerational folks that we have here, and for us to really know that all of our stories matter, and that together we hope to bring love and light to all borders. I know, Eddie, sorry, and thank you for allowing me to kind of jump in a little late. So I'll let Eddie share any other thoughts. Thanks, everyone.
I second that.
Hi, everybody. My name is Angela Abreu. Everyone knows me as Angie, and I am the founder of Dominican Writers Association. I want to express my gratitude for everyone who has joined us this evening to celebrate the debut of Julio Alvarez's book, Afterlife. I know Julio Alvarez as a Dominican writer is very special to me. She was one of the first Dominican writers that I got my hands on, and her books changed my life. So for me to be here today co-sponsoring this event, it means everything. So I hope that you all enjoy this book launch, and you share it and hashtag us, and so go buy the book.
I'm pleased to introduce Angie Cruz, who is a neighbor and who actually grew up a couple blocks away from Word Up. Angie Cruz is a novelist and editor. Her novel, Dominicana, is the inaugural book pick for Good Morning America's book club and was chosen as the 2019-2020 Word Up Uptown Reads selection. It was shortlisted for the Women's Prize, longlisted for the Andrew Carnegie Medals for Excellence in Fiction, the Aspen Awards Literary Prize, and is an RUSA notable book. And her other novels are Soledad and Let It Rain Coffee. She will be introducing Julia and then also moderating the Q&A at the end.
Unmute. Okay, here I am. This is exciting. It's so great to be here and have the opportunity to introduce Julio Alvarez tonight, and also Edwidge Danticat, who are two very, very special writers, and especially during my formative years. But I'll start with Julio. So, Julio Alvarez. In 1991, before I knew I was going to dedicate my life to the business of storytelling, I walked by Barnes & Noble's on 83rd and Columbus Avenue in New York City and saw through the window the book, How the García Girls Lost Their Accents. Imagine my surprise when I saw that she was also Dominican like me. I'm eternally indebted to that book because reading Julia's book planted the seed of possibility in my imagination and led me on my path toward becoming a writer. Julio Alvarez began writing at a time when Latinx writers in the United States were still few and far in between. Today, she is one of the most celebrated American writers of our time, a poet, novelist, essayist, and children's book author. Many of her works are influenced by her love for history, research, her activism, and her roots in the Dominican Republic. She has published 5 novels, a book of essays, 4 collections of poetry, 4 children's books, and 2 works of adolescent fiction, many of which have garnered countless awards and honors. Much like the revolutionary Mirabal sisters, who wouldn't give up on their mission toward social justice, Julio Alvarez is an inspiration. Her commitment to be a positive force for change in the community is evident in her books and also evident in her tireless efforts. Is it with her work translating at local schools in Vermont for the children of Mexican immigrant workers, or her work developing a sustainable farm literacy center called Alta Gracia in Dominican Republic, to her activist work on the border of Dominican Republic and Haiti with the Border of Lights. When asked, why does one read? Julio Alvarez replied, to be able to become a reader is to become sensitized and aware of things. It develops that capacity to be compassionate, to understand, to see, and to be a fuller human being. She also said, I found in literature a place where the table was set for all. Everybody was welcome. I found true democracy in reading. In this spirit, please join me in welcoming one very special guest, Julio Alvarez.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry if I am probably a little flustered because I was disconnected until just now. And I couldn't find how to get back on here. So catch my breath on a learning curve with the technology. I'm hearing a translator now, so it's difficult to speak. Is there something with the sound?
Go ahead, I just muted them.
Oh, thank you, Emmanuel. Again, thank you all for your patience. I might be the oldest person on the screen right now, and I'm on a huge learning curve with all the technology. But I want to thank Word Up and Veronica and all her crew, the Dominican Writers Association, my familia Border of Lights, and Edwidge and Angie for hosting this celebration for all of us. I also want to give a special shout out to, I'm not going to pronounce your name correctly, but Leolai, who is 13 today, Eddie's daughter. So a huge felicidades to you. Anyhow, I am here with Afterlife, and I think I'm supposed to start reading a little bit from the book. Is that correct, Angie?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of us here on the screen, and we might get a little confused, but anyhow, I'm going to read from the very beginning of the book because I think that makes it easier. I don't have to introduce all the characters, and you can start out where the reader starts out at the beginning. The first chapter is the prologue, and it's titled Broken English. And all you need to know is that you're going to be meeting Antonia. Broken English. She is to meet him, a place they often choose for special occasions, to celebrate her retirement from the college, a favorite restaurant, and the new life awaiting her. A half-hour drive from their home, a mountain town, 20 if she speaks in the 30-mile zone. Tonight it makes more sense, a midway point, to arrive separately, as she will be driving from her doctor's appointment. She gets there first, as he will be driving from home. He should have been there before her. She starts calling his cell. After waiting 10, 20 minutes, he doesn't answer. Irritation turns to worry. No surprise there. Always leaves it behind in his work jeans pocket. The hospital, 911, the police. Have you seen him? Or turns off the sound at the movies and then forgets to turn it back on. Can you please help me find him? Even now, months later, about 6 feet, thinning hair, a boy's blue eyes, which he knows good and well, dusk, deepening, driving up the mountain. He feels a stab of pain, already thinking of what he might order, coming from his left side, but radiating out, wondering about her state of mind. The special of it is special. If she would be excited or terrified, or his default favorite, salmon with lemon dill sauce, like a sword piercing his left side. Substituting mashed potatoes for the fries, they're very good about substitutions. Though how would he know what it feels like to have a sword piercing his left side? Because of his medical training, understanding what is happening, not wanting to cause more harm, pronounced dead on arrival. He forgets to charge it and it runs out of juice. Even now, 3 months shy of a year later, pulling his car off the road, rolling gently to a stop, which he knows exactly what happened, a ditch that might as well be his grave, discovered by a passing cyclist, rushed to the ER, why he was late, a ruptured aortic aneurysm, as he is to be cremated and therefore had no grave per se. Neither he nor she could have foreseen, even now, a boy's blue eyes, and cannot comprehend how someone she loved. She keeps running and rerunning that night in her head. Can you please help me find him? Can be nothing but dust, unread emails, fragments, unpaid bills, memories, broken glass, dented bumper. A new life awaiting her, both terrified and excited. How can it be? Can you help me find him? Tall, with thinning hair, a new life awaiting her. Can you help me find him? A mystery she cannot by any means solve. Nevertheless, she keeps asking, where are you? This is the only way she knows. Can you help me find him? How to create an afterlife for him.
Hi, everyone. So I'm also going to do a quick introduction of Edwidge. And she said, please don't say too much. But I had to say something. So in a, that's Edwidge's way, don't say too much. So I decided I would say something really personal that you can't find on Google. The first time I met Edwidge, I was a student at SUNY Binghamton, and she was touring with her book, Breath, Ice, and Memory. She was hiding, or I thought she was hiding behind a bookshelf. My professor had offered us extra credit if we attended. At the time, I thought I wanted to be a writer. I wasn't sure. I was so taken by her story, being born in Haiti and as Dominicana, it's my sister country. When I went out to get my book signed, I asked her, how do I become a writer? Because she wrote a book, and in my book that I bought, she wrote, write, write, write. And as if she casted a spell on me, I did just that. A few years later, I found myself at NYU as an MFA student. She was my first instructor. I marveled at how young she was. We were about the same age, but already she was very accomplished. I won't go into those accomplishments here, but because I know many of you are writing your own stories, I will share something she said to me as a student that has kept me going all these years. She said, if we don't write our stories, who will? Thank you for being here. Please help me welcome both Edwidge and Julia, who will now start a conversation.
My goodness, thank you. Thank you, Angie. That's, you've done so much. I forget that those experiences in that small room at NYU, but your brilliance was always clear. So it's wonderful to be here with you. Congratulations on Dominicana, and it's wonderful to be here with you too, Julia. It's Julia has her props in the back. Yeah, yay, yeah. It's kind of like I think a full circle moment for all of us. So congratulations to you both. And so Julia, since the evening belongs to you and to the afterlife, I want to, now conversations inevitably begin like this. So how are you doing? How are you, where and how are you staying in place?
We are sheltering in place. We are those people that people keep talking about, and now we're the elders, Bill and myself. So we are in Vermont, and it's the time we're all living together, and in spite, or maybe because of it, it's rentingly tender. There are such wonderful people in our community, and spring is coming. The earth has never abandoned us, so that's a renewing thing as well. So thank you for asking, Edwidge, and I hope all those listening are finding signs of rebirth, of afterlives.
Absolutely. Well, I'm here in Miami. I'm wrapped in this beautiful scarf that you gave me. It has butterflies on it, mariposas, which you carry so many of them with you at all times. So I want to talk about the book. So I remember seeing you maybe last year, and you were saying something like you had like 500 pages of a book, but what you really wanted to write was a very short lyrical novel. And the writer who was sitting next to me was like, who doesn't want to have 500 pages of a book? Like, who wants to write a small novel when they have all those pages? And so I remember when I've heard about this book, I wondered, so is this the short lyrical novel you've been wanting to write for so long?
That's a really good question, Edwidge, and it did begin with a big novel that I have been struggling with. When the publisher announced that it's been 15 years since my last adult novel, I thought, ouch, but I've been working so hard on this, on other books, but in terms of adult fiction, on this long novel. And I just finally had to put it aside. But I've always been a fan of that Japanese sensibility which manifests itself in the haiku, whereby you strip away the excess so that what is charged remains. And I've admired novels like Flaubert's A Simple Heart, William Trevor's Reading Turgenev, Julie Otsaka, Buddha in the Attic, and I've always wanted to write that kind of novel. But I come from the rococo, flourishing Caribbean, where things spread and there's generations and points of view. So it seemed that I was not able to do that. But when I put aside this other novel, this one, Afterlife, sprung forth. And so it is a novel that I wanted to write in that short lyrical form that I live on borders in so many ways. And it's at the border of maybe poetry and prose, you know, lyrical, but it tells a story. It has characters, it has actions. So that's a long rather than a short lyrical answer.
Well, it's a beautiful novel, and I think I'm excited. I always, sometimes when I love a book, I'm jealous of people who are going to be reading it for the first time, because you never have quite that experience again. But Antonia, the main character, is also a writer, and she really wants to write this novel about, like, a book of anonymous people. And it's interesting, the conversation that she wants to write about the invisible people, who are the people we're hearing so much about now, right? The people who we don't want to pay a living wage, but now we put them on the front lines. And so she wants to write that book. I'm wondering where those two books met for you, the book that Antonia wanted to write and the book that you wanted to write.
Well, thanks for asking that, because I have been actually writing a little bit about that today, about those people that are the people that we now are thanking and clapping when they go to work. And they are the people that run the world. And Antonia is very taken with us, you know, the people all around her, including these undocumented, invisible people that are running the dairy industry in Vermont. And she, she sees them and she thinks, this is the book that I want to write. So maybe in some ways, Afterlife is about, her encounter with a world that when you lose everything, she's suddenly widowed, she's left her teaching, she's not writing, but when everything is stripped away, like with that Japanese sensibility, sometimes you see, Theodore Rothke has a poem that starts in a dark time, the eye begins to see. So she sees, her neighbors, the pregnant girl in her garage, the little people she has always othered, the sort of kind of right-wing sheriff, the farmer next door who doesn't like, wants to return Vermont to the old times, but she doesn't other them. She starts to see their humanity and connect with them, and they with her. So in some ways it enacts that encounter, Antonia and the world that she is suddenly very awake to. She doesn't have her usual protections, her literature, her classroom, her husband, her safeties. So she sees.
Mm-hmm. One of her safeties is also poetry. And the section that you read, Broken English, reminds me of a poem that you often read that I think that's called Broken English, or one of your poems, or you a poet like, or I just remember reading about Broken English in one of your poems. And so what is and Antonia always has poetry in her head. What is the role of poetry, especially in this book, which is so much about grief that she talks, about the language of grief. What is the role of poetry in your view and through this novel as a kind of entry into the language of grief?
Well, I think that Antonia has been all her life. I mean, it's a handicap of being a teacher and also a writer. She's always, these poems that have been so meaningful to her have been her thread through the labyrinth. It's kept her, it's a way that she's made meaning of her life, and that she's held on to a kind of integration. But what happens, in this book, I wanted to, it's really, I've described it as a contemporary book of Job with a female Latina character in the main role instead of an old patriarch. But what happens when everything is stripped away, even her beloved apparatus for making meaning, her poems, her stories, the things she has marshaled to put herself together, when that falls apart, and she is just at, ground zero, she's hit bottom. So I also not only wanted to find the way poetry and literature and stories and narratives can help us make meaning, but what happens when they fall apart? As all little meaning mechanisms will do from time to time. What happens when they fall apart? How do you put a life back together? And I don't have any answers, Edwidge. I just want, Chekhov once said that the task of the writer is not to solve the problem, but to state it correctly. So I invite these questions in this character's life.
Yeah, and you invite them so deeply and profoundly on there's 2 tracks to the story. I don't want to give too much, but even though I know there's nothing perhaps more annoying than people reading a writer back to themselves, but I found this so beautiful, this where you talk about the language of grief is not very inviting. Visitors don't want to linger. The best thing you can do for the people who love you is to usher them quickly through it. And she does not want to become poor Antonia. So there's the weight of the grief there, and then that kind of pick me up, like she's carrying on as though everything is all right. I wanted to talk too about the prescience of art there, because I was almost startled towards the end of a book when I came across this other passage where Antonia is listening to the rattle of the respirator, the beeping of monitors, her sister weeping in the background. And she's doing this through the phone. And it's such a familiar story right now, sadly, how we're hearing about this whole reshaping, that like the map of mourning, how people grieve has completely changed. Like the past few weeks, I've been going to now Zoom funerals for the friends of my parents. And it's this whole other way of mourning. I wonder what you were feeling writing those words, and like how it felt to write them then, and then now to come to this moment where people are living something you wrote, ways back.
Yeah, there is a strange kind of prescience to realize that, the world that Antonia is traveling through, which is a world where things have fallen apart, where there's loss, where she's very aware of the ending of things, not just in a personal way, but the environment, the loss of species, in civil life, with the loss of civility, gun violence, all these things. She feels like the world is just fallen apart. And, part of it is, as I said, a book of Job. Everything has fallen apart, but how will, it's prescient in some ways, because I do think we writers pick up the zeitgeist. So this stuff was already in the air. This is the eruption of it in a huge way, but it was already there. The viruses were already there. So in a sense, it's might have been sensing that, but also I must say, as we paint this grim picture, I also think that to get stuck in the despair is a privilege, an entitlement, and a luxury we can't afford, because there are the young generation coming up, and they need our resilience, they need our eldership, they need our grit, they need our hope. So that's where, you know, I can't make something happen for a character, but that's where I think, not to give a spoiler alert, where Antonia ends up. So it's both prescient of this moment, but also looking beyond this moment and saying, there will be an afterlife. Life is full of many little deaths, but we do and can and must survive them and come out in a bigger version of ourselves. And this is what I wanted for my characters. This is what I want for all of us now. So yeah, prescient, but also looking ahead too, you know.
I have just two more questions, and then I want everyone to get an opportunity to ask their questions. So like Angie, my first introduction to you was through the García girls. And while I was reading this, I was like, is this the García girls' grandmas? Is this the García girls, you know,
Wow.
as older women, or are they, and I guess you come back often to sisterhood, you know, starting with the García girls, and then, you know, the Maribas sisters, and then these sisters. And for me, I'm endlessly fascinated by that type of sisterhood, because I don't have sisters. I'm the oldest, and I have 3 brothers. So I'm always like, I love reading about sisters, which is another thing that I love in your work. But I wondered about these sisters. Are they an evolution of your other sisters, or I'm not going to ask if they're your sisters, because that would be rude, but talk to us about sisters.
Well, first of all, Edwidge, if I may correct you, you have sisters, honey. We're sisters by other mothers, okay? Yeah. There's a bunch of people out that would say the same thing. So
that's true.
And you have an older sister.
Thank you for the blood.
Anyhow, that said, you know, yeah, I mean, I come from a family of all women, all sisters, and I've always been interested. We spoke about invisible people. I've always been interested in the women and what was their story that didn't get written down historically. What were their the little covens and connections, the quilting groups, the tias getting together to cook something in the kitchen, you know, that sisterhood, whether by blood or bond, coming together and being a power to be reckoned with, as we see with the Mirabar sisters. So yeah, in some ways I wanted to see sisterhood, but from an elder point of view, because this is the other thing I say about this novel. It's my first novel as an elder. And that's why it took me so long to write, because I had to understand and absorb and build a root system for what does it mean to be an elder of the tribe. So yeah, I'm interested in sisterhood, always have been, and now sisterhood from an older perspective. So they both, you know, have some of the DNA from the García girls and the Mirabar sisters, but they're also their own characters. As you know, Edwidge, when you write a story, the characters, they might have a seed in reality or in something planned, but then they become their own characters inside a story, and you have to follow them there But sisterhood has always been a strong theme and continues to be for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to close my part by asking you, in the role of an elder, and I think it's a big responsibility. So what do you think we need to do now? I know it's a big question. As an elder, like give us something for these times, I guess, we'll be like Tia Julia said to the children. Yeah.
I'll tell you something. I've been to some of the climate change marches, some of the, Black Lives Matter marches, and I just feel like an elder that my job, first of all, I am just so impressed and moved by how smart and courageous and amazing these young people. I mean, I was not there when I was 13 at some of these kids that walked out for the climate change and joined us on the town green. Middle school, I mean, they get it. They're strong, they're vibrant, they are visionaries, and I am amazed. So sometimes I think that my job as an elder is not to, they know a lot more than I do. It's to accompany them, to help them with as much in any way I can, and especially to help them with what is my passion and what I love, because that's part also of Afterlife. That the best activism is doing the thing you love in service to your community. But if you try to be some other person activist, it's not going to work, and you're just going to add more anxiety and resentment in the world. But if you lead with love, but I think mostly to accompany, to listen. Someone stood in the front row and clapped when I was a young person. Now I have to show up and be there for those young people and help them, because I think they're way ahead of,
I love that. Yeah, I love that idea of leading with love, because I mean, we're not always going to be perfect, but that's a wonderful takeaway, I think, for me, leading with love.
Right. And the thing you love, to do the thing you love is a kind of radical activism, especially if you don't just do it for your own aggrandizement, or that isn't the orientation, but if you do it in the service of your communities, I think that's a place to put it, to create the beloved community that we all yearn for, and we'll need to do the hard work ahead.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I'm so happy we had an opportunity to have another one of our chats this time. This is the first time I've done this like that. So you're bringing me in here. I'm going to turn it over to Angie she'll do the moderating. And if I feel like super inspired, I'll jump in and say something as well. But it's up to the assembly now to ask their questions.
First, Edwidge, those questions were amazing. And
thank you.
Yeah, it feels so, I feel like when you said the earth has not abandoned us, it reminds me again, like if we feel our feet on the ground, that is something, right? And if we look at the bounty that the earth keeps providing us, the sun shows up, the trees shows up, the birds show up. I think it's a really, it's a big reminder on that we could also show up, right?
Yeah.
We should, you're right. So thank you so much for all of that. I was thinking about when I met with you 10 years ago, I think it was 12 years ago in Texas, you had said something about that you didn't write emails or texts. You tried to stay away from them because they corrupted the tools of your creative language. Like they corrupt your creativity. And I think right now, everything is virtual, right? Like we're kind of like the technology has become a prosthetic. And I'm wondering, how do you take care and protect that creative space now that we have no choice, right? So I'm curious how you're taking care of yourself in this moment and staying inspired.
I think it's a learning curve. I think it's been very difficult because it's a lot of, the screen time for me is a kind of hyper time, you know, a lot of stimulation, and writing is the opposite time that I entered, a contemplative time, a time of focus, a time when things slow down, a time when I penetrate. So it's two different things. And I think the thing about the internet and all the wonderful things that are possible through it is that the instrument you use to write with, your computer, is also the instrument of your distraction. It would be like if you were a cellist and your cello suddenly was beeping and lighting up and emoticons were coming on and messages, you know, it's a tricky thing. I heard that, you know, that some writers buy this app where they disable their internet while they're writing in order to do that. And what I try to do is just to create a space and time where the people who want to be in touch with me know that I'm not available. I'm not going to go to emails till after I've put in the writing time, the writing day. You know, I'm not going to be available, accessible. And that's tough because everybody is, especially now, supposed to be always accessible. So I think it's important. And I think you just mentioned spring and the birds. It's important to be off screen. You know, maybe we're all having to practice separation now, but the garden is still there. We don't have to separate from it. We can be there in real time. You know, so it's important. These balances are important. And I think each person has to find out what will work for them. And I think maybe younger generations have learned those multi skills that I think I'm hopeless to try to learn now. So I have to abide by, you know, the rituals that work for me.
So we have a lot of questions from the audience, and I'm going to start with one by Beatriz Collado, who said that in your book you mentioned a study stating Dominicans have a higher chance of having dementia, which I didn't know this study. And she's really interested in finding out where you found that information because she would like to pursue it.
Yeah, it's a very interesting study done at Columbia Presbyterian, near where you are, Angie, right? Yep. And it was, the reason that it came up is that the study being done there on dementia, they asked for subjects, and many of them, because of the neighborhood, Washington Heights, were Dominicans. And they started tracking that there was a higher incidence among Dominicans. And there's certain genetic components that, because of how we were such an insular island for so long and people were intermarrying, that recessive gene got strengthened. But if people want to find out about it, it was an article that a friend of mine, Sue Halpern, Bill McKibben's wife, another neighbor who's a wonderful environmental writer, she wrote an article in the New Yorker, and you can Google it and find it there. She also wrote a wonderful nonfiction book that has that chapter in it called I Can't Remember What I Forgot. And it's about research being done on memory. So yeah, it's very interesting.
I want to look it up. So Alexandra Fendrick, she has a question for young writers. We have a number of young writers here today, actually, from middle school and high school. So this is for both of you, Julia and Edwidge. The question is, how can young writers write in a moment like this? What advice would you give them? I know for myself as a teacher, a number of my students feel like, what is the meaning? What is it, you know, why do it now in this moment where other things feel more urgent? So I'm curious, like, yeah, do you have any ideas how these young writers can connect to one another, use writing as a way not to feel so isolated or anything? Yeah, any advice you may have.
Well, Edwidge, you gave advice to Angie years back, so I'll let you start. What did you say to her? You want to be a writer?
I told her to write. And probably there may be a few more resources than there was at that time, Angie. Probably Angie started an organization for young writers because of the lack. And now there's organizations like Girls Right Now and other organizations, and you know, young people can connect in the space. But I said to a younger person in my family who writes, I said, you know, this is an amazing time. You need to document it for yourself, if not for other people, but for yourself. And so initially I led with document it for the future. And she said to me, and then I was like, okay, you're right. She's like, they're gonna look at Facebook and Instagram and they'll know what happened. She's like, that's gonna be the historical record. But then I had to shift my advice to just write it for yourself then, right? Write to see at some point you might want to see the person you were in this moment and how you overcame this. And so I think maybe if it's intimidating to think what's the point? Will we even be here tomorrow? But to write it for yourself, write it as a therapy, write it as something you might want to look back on later on. Just write it for the primary reason that people have been writing since the beginning of time, because you have to, because you must, you know.
Yeah, and I think also, you know, they can get it on Facebook, they can play it on YouTube, but it won't be the felt experience of how this human sensibility, this person that is uniquely you, understood this moment, how you moved through it, because that's what we've always wanted in stories. I mean, otherwise we just look up the facts and get, you know, kind of printout of, you know, what happened. But we want to know, you know, what did it feel like as it happened inside you, around you, what you noticed. And each person will have their own little fingerprint that none other can duplicate. And those are important. Those are important voices that we need to hear from. So I think that's, yeah, and the other thing is, you know, in a way to build up the habit of writing, you know, like a practice, like if you have a meditation practice or you run, you just write something every day. It can be in a journal, it can be a letter, it can be something you compose, anything, but you build up the ongoing habit of writing as a way of moving through life. It becomes a, you know, a strong muscle in you. So I think it's, you know, it doesn't sound very exciting, but it is like the dancer that goes to the bar every day, the runner who jogs every day. It's a way of building writing as a life, not just as, you know, a profession or a job or whatever.
Yeah. And I find that it reduces my anxiety. It helps also therapeutically for me to write whatever I write.
Yeah, I agree.
There seems to be a lot of writers on this chat, a lot, right? So there's a lot of writing questions that are, if I sum them up, the questions are, where do you find inspiration? how do you start a story? Why do you decide to write the things you write? You know, basically, where does one begin, right? So I like the question that I like, which I think is usually fun for me, is like figuring, it's like learning from writers, like what are their current obsessions, you know, and how they create a creative life, right? What are you turning to keep that fire, like in the work, right? And working from that Lord space of the erotic, right? Where your work is hot. Like, what are you doing to make that happen? Like, what are you reading? What are you watching? What are you doing? Yeah.
Well, I'm home with a teenager and a 11-year-old, so we're doing a lot of school. But I find also like I'm reading about older situations like this. So I reread Camus' La Peste, The Plague. And then I find, like, I remember when I went to my independent bookstore and I got like Books and Books down here. I got one of the last copies on the shelf, and then the books person was looking at me. But then you read that and you're like, and then it's like, oh, this has all happened in some way before. And I think that's the power of literature, and that's why it's important to write now. That sort of reaffirmation of like, oh, unprecedented in some ways, but not so unprecedented in others. So I kind of like to read things now that remind me of the circularity of moments like this, and that's one of them.
Yeah, I think that when the life and the work are connected, in a way, you don't have to work to know what to put in your work, because your life will bring it to you. I mean, look at what's happening now. Your life will, if you stop trying to sort of control it and pressure yourself with what am I going to write about, and as I say, you go to the writing desk, you spend the time there, you disconnect, you listen, your life will let you know, like your dreams do, the things that will run. I hate that fossil fuel metaphor, but you know, that the thing that is in you, that you need to understand. And definitely this moment we're living in now is something we're all grappling with. So yeah, I find that I'm reading a lot of poetry. For me, poetry is always, it's incantation. It's language at the very borderland with silence. And it listens and it hearkens. And I find it also incantory and propulsive. So I always start the writing day, by reading a little poetry. I'm reading an amazing book now, and I really recommend it, A Paragon by Colin McCann. And it is, I'm learning things about writing, and that also helps to have writers you're reading. When my reading isn't going well, my writing isn't going well. You know, that I need to be sort of stimulated in that way.
And Angie, can I also add for the young writers? I think there's so many also terrible stories now in our communities, with immigration, with really this coming wave of unemployment. And so I would say one of the things also, if people are looking for subjects to write, like you can't go out in the community, or, you know, like you're trying to shelter in place, but, you know, some people can't, but to try to tell some of those stories too, as much as you can. If you have someone who's living through a hard time, and And because those are going to always remain the buried stories, right, under that. But people are going to be like the most affected in these communities too. So that's another thing. If you're looking, look for the stories around you, and in terms, talking to people as best as you can while keeping social distancing and so forth. But yeah, look around you at the stories that are not being told, and and they'll remain untold, a lot of them, because for the usual reasons. But if you're looking for stories, look around. There's a lot of pain in the communities that a lot of us are from, right now.
I also we have a young writer, anonymous, in town, who we don't know who she is, but people are sort of delighted. She writes haikus with chalk on the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. And they're wonderful little moments, like you say, Edwidge, something she noticed, a person she talked to. And they're, people are sort of, oh, we found one, and they post it on Front Porch Forum. So I think there's ways in which, a writer documenting not only can give maybe insight in the future to what is happening now, but can give delight to people around you. And this young writer decided that she was going to do that. We don't know who she is. We're all trying to catch her at it, but maybe not. It's fun to just have the poems.
I'm reading all the questions, so I'm trying to find a way to fold them together, because I think they're asking very similar things, and I think there's similar urgencies. Some of them are asking, how do you overcome heartbreak? Which I wish you have the answer for that, because I think it's so hard. But I was thinking maybe one way to ask this question is, because you had mentioned the many deaths that we experience, so many, right? Throughout our lives, and there's always an afterlife, and
or not. Not guaranteed.
Not guaranteed. Okay. But I was thinking about, okay, both of you have had many years in the writing life, in life in general, moving across these different countries and from cultures that have experienced a lot of pain. And what are spaces of resistance that you see now, that are urgent, or that you feel now as a woman of color? Because there's a number of questions about being a woman of color in the world and as an artist. What are those spaces of resistance now for you?
Well, I guess this is a moment where I can mention a project that I am involved with an amazing woman, Lisa Labo, whom I met in DC at a reading, and I was talking about my muse and someone that I discovered as a little girl that really lit me up, and that was the story of Scheherazade, the woman of the Arabian Nights, who saves her life and the life of all the women in her kingdom by telling stories. So the idea evolved of something we were calling the ScheherazadeProject.org. You can look it up. And what we plan to do is, we don't have 1,001 nights till the next election, thank God, but starting in, I think it's going to be in July, for 101 nights, we're going to do a project whereby a woman artist, and the original idea would go to the White House, eat only for 5 minutes each night, and tell a story, sing a song, dance a dance, paint a picture, and then fold up her goods and leave, just as a kind of ongoing connection of activism and the arts. And now with everything online, we're going to start the project online. And so the Scheherazade Project, it's a way that I think using storytelling to remind us of the things we mustn't forget. You asked what I'm looking for, what I think is important right now: community, our own communities, and a bigger concept of community. You know, communities that were, you know, gated away from in our own ways, the larger community of the globe. So I think community is for me. And, you know, we're all apart now. You know, we're all apart, but reading, writing has always been about being together apart. So in some ways, we do know this moment and can work with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think community, especially in these increased vulnerabilities that this moment has brought for undocumented people in a place like Miami, and, you know, just working with organizations that or contributing whatever you can in whatever way to organizations that are working with groups like that. For example, you know, there have been deportations here all last week of people who in many cases have tested positive for COVID-19, that they've deported back to Haiti, to Guatemala, and places that would be so, you know, have fragile health systems that, you know, that one person can really devastate an area if they're returned that way. And they've been, you know, deporting people like that. So I think it's going to gradually, you know, it's been bad the last 3 years immigration wise, you know, for people, but I think the vulnerabilities are going to increase. So I see that as a possible space. And I see, I mean, also the inequalities in the way that this disease strikes, right? That it heightens and reveals all these existing inequalities in healthcare. But I think we'll have a layering of that, because what you've had in the last year or so are people who might be afraid to take their kid to a free clinic because the immigration ban is out there. Or so I feel like, you know, you have the pandemic, but then it's layering these other issues that no matter how we come out on the other side, people will be even more vulnerable, you know, at the end.
There's a question from Rosa Sanchez, and she's asking both of you, is there one of your novels, because you have so many books, which one's your favorite of your own? It's an unfair question to ask, but I you know, I am curious too.
For me, it's Brother, I'm Dying. Like, I feel like if I had just written one book and it was that book, it would be okay. But it's because it has so much of my family in there, and I feel like I never have to sit my children down for lectures about the family. I would just hand them that book, you know, like when they want to read it. So I used to not have a favorite. I used to say it's like the one yet to be written that was my favorite, but that one is my favorite. I've accepted that to myself.
I always still say, you know, you don't ask your kids, or the kids ask, which one is your favorite? And you say, you're all my favorite. and each one for what I learned from it and how I grew and how it changed me through the writing of that book. So, but I have to say that I think the accurate thing to say is that my favorite, or the one that you know, most obsesses me and most engages me, is the one that I am trying to write each time, because that's the one that needs my love. It needs my focus. It needs there's almost, you know, it's kind of capricious, but you leave the others behind, because I don't rely on them to prove anything. Because when I enter a new book, I have to learn how to write that book. And so beginner's mind all over again. So I feel like the love has to turn into the work that I'm doing instead of the others. And it would be hard to pick because each one has taught me something different.
Right. Well, that goes into a question that also, again, I'm collapsing some of these questions around technique. A lot of questions around craft and technique and choices that writers make. And I was thinking about that maybe one way to ask this question is, I mean, for me, when I finish a book, I think I don't want to do the same thing again, right? So one book I write with multiple points of view, the next one I say, I really want to try this other thing, you know. Do you create constraints? I mean, you spent a long time working on Afterlife, right? So.
No. The Afterlife was the one that came, the long one was the one that I still am trying to get my arms around. But I think, you know what, Angie, maybe you're right, because by working hard on that other one, I was learning things that I needed for this one. And that's the thing, you never know, you know, but it was a practice, yeah.
So do you create like certain, like do you technique-wise to respond to these writers online that are asking these questions around craft, do you create constraints for yourself when you work or not, right? Like, do you have a kind of way to enter the work that makes it less, I mean, novels are so big, right? So is there a way that you make it less, I guess, overwhelming?
That's it. Well, first of all, by accepting that it's going to be a messy process. I don't know the answer, you know, and if I took a cookie cutter of the things that I wanted to do and put it on the material, I would not do it service. By the same token, because I have certain preferences and certain things that I've been reading and certain authors that I've been admiring, I'm naturally, you know, like I said, if my reading is going well, my writing is going well, I want to try that out. How this novel starts, I had no idea I was going to start with this fragmented, broken English, all pieces and shards. You know, I had a more traditional sense of, you know, first chapter, second chapter, but somehow it felt like I needed to, for the prose to reflect in its syntax, in its details, the very thing that she was feeling, Antonia. So it just came from trying it out. And, you know, having a writing group helps when you get to be an older writer and you're published. It really helps to have a good editor. My editor for this, Amy Gash, a wonderful agent, Stuart Bernstein. They read and they help me see my work as if somebody else had written it. And that is very important. That's the revision process that can be very tough to make that transition. So you start to, you know, you might have this messy thing and you start to shape it. And again, like I said, if you have certain things that you admire or that you've been thinking about or reading about, it will get in the work. It will lead you. I'm a big believer in that rather than, you know, I come at it with an idea already. So I do that, Angie, but it never works for me. You know, when I come at it, this is what I'm going to do. This is how it's, you know, it doesn't work.
Yeah, and I would say to write what just haunts you, right? Like Toni Morrison, write the book you want to read. And, you know, like write that story that you feel like on your deathbed you will regret not having written. And that's a good starting place, because often when you start a novel, you don't know if it will be 9 weeks, like they say it was for Zora Neale Hurston with Their Eyes Watching God, or if it's going to be like 20 years. So you have to, yeah, right? You have to have passion for it. You have to, there has to be something about that story that makes you want to just get out of bed every day, and even if reluctantly, but you still want to return to it.
So we're going to close now and ask the last question, which a number of people have asked. So what's next for both of you?
Dinner? What's next for you, Angie? We didn't.
What about you, Angie?
Well, I am working on a book. I mean, I started working today on a book that I couldn't work on for weeks during the pandemic. I've had a very difficult time concentrating. So I am working on a book. Are you working on something that you're excited about, or are you on I mean, during publicity it's just really hard to work, so but I'm just
well, I'm not returning to the full thing, the story that I was grappling with before, but part of that material I've returned to. And you know, as you said, with publicity and a lot of little things are coming in. At first I thought, no, you know, can I write about this? Can I contribute to this pandemic? I thought, you know, these things are all coming in. Can I meet with a class? And at first I thought, no. And then I thought, you know what? You are locked up and you feel so many days, I feel so helpless to help. And this is a way that you can help. So I think part of it is, as much as I, you know, fight it, that impulse in me of, you know, I've got work to do, to say, no, this is the work now. And I think, you know, a friend of mine said this, and I think it's a really good piece of advice. Be gentle with yourself in this time and gentle with each other, you know, to try to, this is the best thing you can do. You know, if you know, or the virus, it is an infection inside you. You have to stay with the things you love and love the people who need you in their community. That's a way to give. You can't be at the ER. You can't be stocking shelves, but yeah, you can connect with people in other ways.
Yeah, I'm working on some essays because I feel like I'm feeling so much that sense of like that thing, the fragility of life. Like I feel like that so deeply. I feel like that's the best way to get that, all like the fears and things out of my head. But I really love what you said too about this is the work now, right? And I think a lot of people thought, oh, I'm going to be inside for a month. I'm going to finish my novel. I'm going to do this. And I think it is good to be kind to yourself and allow yourself to feel these, you know, to just feel things, you know.
Because that will get in the work, you know, it will get in the work. It's it's the life that feeds the art. It's not a separation. It's, you know, it is. And, you know, like we say, so many things are being dismantled. We're seeing the end of so many things dismantled. Part of it is maybe a dismantling of our own ways of understanding our work, you know, and that's both terrifying, but also exciting and renewing. So.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Angie. Thank you.
Thank you,
everybody.
Yes.
My familia, thank you so much.
The interpreter.
Bill says hello. Thank you.
Bill.
Happy birthday. Maybe we could sing a little happy birthday.
Yeah, we can do that.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Birthday to you. All right.
Happy birthday
to you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you for coming.
Veronica.
Thank you, Angie. Thank you, Edwidge. Thank you, Veronica.
To our co-sponsors, to everyone for coming out. Please remember that you can buy these books either at wordupbooks.com or from any independent bookstore. You know, a lot of people who could use support, that's where you can support both the authors and the bookstores that you love. And don't forget to fill out the census to support your community at mycensus2020.gov. And, you know, as always, you can contribute to Word Up, and so we can put on events like this and also then through these events bring people together who are buying the books, but also all of the young people who are in the audience today too, who will also get books for participating. Thank you so much to the authors and to everyone. We're gonna just go out with some music and
go have dinner, Edwidge.
Have good dinner, everyone who hasn't had any yet.
Bye. Bye-bye.